Daniela Espicia Flores was born in the late 1990s in the vibrant city of Barranquilla, Colombia. She was the fourth of 5 children of a woman named Patricia Flores Pineda, although the identity of her father has not been disclosed. Daniela grew up in Villa del Carmen alongside her 4 siblings, of whom only Eduardo and Ileana are known by name. She spent her early years under the loving care of her mother and surrounded by the affection of her grandmother and other relatives living nearby. Daniela's birth was always considered a true miracle. During her mother's pregnancy, Daniela faced a serious complication when her tiny body detached from the uterus at just 4 months gestation. The doctors had little hope for her survival and prepared for the worst, expecting her heart to stop beating before they could perform a necessary extraction and curettage. However, against all odds, the baby clung to life and her heart continued to beat despite the dire prognosis. In light of this unexpected turn of events, medical staff provided the required assistance to ensure her mother could carry the pregnancy to term. Those who knew her described Daniela as a child filled with remarkable energy and spontaneity. Her cheerful demeanor made her the center of attention in every family gathering, and her passion for dancing shone brightly at parties, where she consistently displayed a captivating dexterity that fascinated everyone around her. Daniela was very close to her cousin, Abigail Lopez, with whom she shared a deep bond of complicity since childhood. They attended the same high school and spent their free time together, engaging in rituals such as hairstyling, painting each other's nails, and applying makeup activities that continued well into adulthood. Daniela often visited Abigail, who lived nearby, to prepare for family gatherings at their grandmother's house. However, her life changed significantly when, at the age of 13, she began a romantic relationship with Eduardo Diaz Mendoza, a young man 5 years her senior, whom she had known since childhood. According to Eduardo, the younger of the two, the bond between him and Daniela developed due to the proximity of their homes and their shared upbringing. He claimed that they were close friends who enjoyed playing and spending time together as children. Though they had known each other since early childhood, it was only during their adolescence that Daniela and Eduardo's relationship blossomed into something more significant. Despite her youth and the fact that she was still a minor, they eventually married and welcomed a baby boy before Daniela turned 16, followed later by the birth of a baby girl. Motherhood radically transformed Daniela's life, forcing her to mature prematurely. She not only had to focus on her work but also on raising her children. Nonetheless, she remained the cheerful, family-oriented girl known for her generosity and attention to detail. Daniela never let a special occasion pass without planning a surprise, especially for the birthdays of her loved ones. Most of her care and tokens of affection were directed toward her children and her mother. Despite facing economic challenges, she made every effort to provide them with everything they needed. The quiet life filled with love and joyful moments that she shared with her family masked a starkly different reality. Behind closed doors, her relationship with Eduardo was far from idyllic, and information about Eduardo remains largely elusive. However, considering the age difference between him and Daniela, it can be inferred that he was born in 1994 in Barranquilla. As previously mentioned, they grew up in the same neighborhood. Daniela's relatives described Eduardo as a violent, impulsive, and obsessive man who abused illegal substances. From the beginning of their relationship, he physically and emotionally assaulted Daniela. According to testimonies, he even threatened her life on several occasions, insisting that his threats were not empty and that he would flee after carrying out his intentions. Over time, this abuse escalated to such a degree that in 2018, Daniela decided to separate from him. Despite her efforts, the harassment and mistreatment continued, and she did not remain silent. Daniela filed at least 2 complaints for domestic violence, the most recent being on May 8, 2020. Despite her fear of his constant threats, she was determined to have no further dealings with him and had resolved to rebuild her life. She secured a job as a sales consultant at a cell phone store and planned to pursue her studies. Those who knew her recognized that she was preparing for a fulfilling life and a different future, far removed from Eduardo. Tragically, this happiness was abruptly interrupted by an unforeseen tragedy that left her loved ones in disbelief. On Monday, August 17, 2020, Daniela left her home, promising her grandmother that she would return soon. Neither of them imagined it would be the last time they would see each other. That day, she passed by the house of a neighbor who often babysat her children, leaving her children in their care. She then descended the neighborhood stairs toward a destination unknown to her family, unaware that she was heading toward her tragic end. According to Daniela's account, the day before, Eduardo had contacted her, insisting on meeting to give her money for the support of their 2 children. Now 21 years old, Daniela, weary of her ex-partner's persistent attempts to re-enter her life, made it clear that she did not wish to see him and suggested he send the money through other means. Nevertheless, Eduardo managed to convince her to meet with him. After that encounter, her family never heard from her again. Hours later that day, Janice received the most devastating phone call a mother can experience. According to various sources, her ex-son-in-law, the father of her grandchildren, called to inform her that he had taken Daniela's life. Overwhelmed by anguish, the family clung to the hope that Eduardo's words were not entirely true. Although he had previously threatened them with violence, they hoped he had merely assaulted her and that she was still alive. They embarked on a frantic search through health centers and police stations throughout the city, desperately hoping to find her. However, that flicker of hope was extinguished when a police officer contacted Janice, requesting that she come to the morgue. They had discovered the body of a young woman in a motel in downtown Barranquilla, and her description matched that of her daughter. When she arrived, her worst fears were confirmed. Daniela was there, listed as NNA, term used for unidentified deceased individuals. Her belongings had not been found at the scene, including her identification documents. The young mother's body was discovered in one of the rooms by a maid who had seen her arrive a couple of hours earlier, accompanied by a man. The motel staff became suspicious when the man left the premises alone, carrying the purse that Daniela had when they checked in. After briefly conversing with a female employee at the front desk, who inquired whether his companion would be staying longer, he replied that she would be leaving soon to change her clothes. He then hurriedly exited the motel. Concerned about the young woman, the staff eventually decided to check on her. After knocking several times without a response, they forced the door open and were horrified by what they found. The woman lay naked on the bed, covered by a sheet, with a pillow over her face. She had suffered a significant wound to her chest, apparently inflicted by a broken glass bottle found nearby. They immediately alerted the authorities. After positively identifying Daniela's body, her relatives were quick to point to Daima as the person responsible for her death. This suspicion was corroborated by witnesses at the motel who recognized the man who had accompanied her. Despite the gravity of the crime, the police did not immediately act to apprehend him, instilling a deep sense of fear among Daniela's family and friends. They urged the authorities to act swiftly to prevent anyone else from suffering the same fate as Daniela. Eduardo, Daniela's brother, expressed that Daima was a dangerous individual and that as long as he remained at large, no one would be safe. According to local media reports, the family revealed that after committing the crime, Daima contacted his own relatives to request clothes and money for his escape. This telephone conversation allegedly took place from a store in the neighborhood where both the victim and the suspect lived. Neighbors who overheard the conversation promptly informed Daniela's family about Daima's attempts to evade justice. The grief of Daniela's loved ones was palpable, particularly for her 2 young children who were left orphaned. Janice recounted with anguish that the youngest child, just 2 years old, refused to eat, although she did not fully understand what had happened. Meanwhile, the 5-year-old had yet to be informed about his mother's death, even as he began to sense her absence. Just before the funeral, which took place 2 days later, the family discovered that Daima's relatives had moved out of the neighborhood, disappearing without a trace, which only deepened their despair and helplessness regarding the possibility of the crime going unpunished. The brutal murder of Daniela Espicia Flores sparked outrage in her community, prompting her family and friends to organize a peaceful protest days later. This demonstration carried a powerful message of resilience, with protesters demanding an accelerated search for and apprehension of those responsible, while also honoring Daniela's memory. Eduardo emphasized that their actions aimed to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future, stressing that all they sought was justice and greater support from authorities for victims of domestic violence. According to her, the protest was a powerful act of solidarity, bringing together numerous women who came to demand protection and security in the wake of this tragedy. Following the demonstration, both the Metropolitan Police and the Attorney General's office swiftly mobilized to locate the sole suspect, offering a reward of 5 million Colombian pesos, equivalent to just over $1. $000 to anyone who could provide information that would aid in apprehending the alleged perpetrator. Despite these efforts, the arrest warrant for him was not issued until several days after Daniela's body was discovered. The prosecutor's office began to analyze security footage from the motel, as well as from homes and businesses in the area, in an attempt to reconstruct Daniela's last moments and track her attacker's movements. The images captured by the lodging's cameras turned out to be crucial evidence in the investigation, showing how Daniela and Daima exited a taxi before entering the motel. The ex-couple remained at the reception desk, conversing with an employee before receiving their room keys and heading to a randomly assigned room. Unfortunately, they were placed in a room located at the far end of the hallway, isolated from other guests. About an hour later, as previously mentioned, Daima left the facility alone. Armed with this evidence, the authorities intensified their search for the suspect and issued an alert through the National Police Network, hoping he was still in the country for an eventual arrest. Daima's capture did not occur until September 6, 2020, almost 3 weeks after the crime, when he was apprehended in Bogota while attempting to commit a robbery. His presence in the capital coincided with the reactivation of domestic transport and flights after the restrictions imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, it remains unclear how he managed to travel to the city despite having an arrest warrant against him. During his arrest, Daima presented an identity document that, upon analysis by the authorities, was found to be false. According to the commander of the Metropolitan Police of Bogota, the suspect had altered both his name and physical appearance in an attempt to avoid detection. However, thanks to the comparison of his fingerprints, the authorities were able to identify him in a virtual hearing. In addition to the crime of aggravated femicide, he was indicted on charges of falsification of a public document. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, primarily the security camera footage that directly implicated him in the crime, Daima did not accept responsibility. Daniela's family received the news with a mixture of relief and indignation. Janice expressed his strong desire for justice, calling for the law to be applied with the utmost severity against the man accused of taking his sister's life. The family emphasized that their primary concern was ensuring Daima was brought to Barranquilla to face the charges against him. They wanted him to fully assume the consequences of his actions and pay for the damage he had caused to both them and his own children. The judicial process advanced swiftly as the accused reached a pre-agreement with the prosecutor's office. Although he initially did not accept charges during the preliminary hearings before a supervisory judge, the evidence presented by the prosecutor, along with witness statements, ultimately led him to confess to being the author of the crime. Finally, after a year of waiting, the sentencing hearing was held virtually on August 12, 2021, during which Daima Eduardo Diaz Mendoza, 26 years old, was sentenced to 34 years, 8 months, and 20 days in prison. In addition to this lengthy sentence, he was disqualified from holding public office or exercising any related functions for 20 years. He is currently incarcerated at La Picota prison in Bogota. While the motive for the crime has not been definitively established, authorities presume that an argument between the couple escalated inside the room. It is believed that the accused broke a bottle, which he used to attack the young woman, and also pressed a pillow against her face to suffocate her. The brutality of the crime and the stigmatization of the victim left a profound wound in the hearts of those who knew Daniela. According to figures from the Women's Network of Atlantico, she became the 21st feminicide recorded in the department as of August 2000, an alarming indicator of the severity of this issue. The tragic story of Daniela Espicia Flores serves as a reminder of the violence that many women face in their daily lives. Although her brief existence was marked by moments of joy and family togetherness, it culminated in a heartbreaking situation that left her loved ones grief-stricken. Moreover, it ignited a collective cry for justice and protection. Her grim end may inspire other women to raise their voices against gender-based violence and motivate authorities to take decisive action against aggressors, ensuring that in the future, every woman's life is valued and protected. Now that you are aware of the details of this crime that shocked Colombians, what do you think? Is this a tragedy that could have been avoided? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for joining us for today's case. I look forward to seeing you in the next installment, where we will analyze more details surrounding some of the most terrible crimes in history. Until then, goodbye.